But the prosecutors, the feds, do not give a shit about the victims. You think that Cassie Ventura, about to pop from her baby, from being pregnant, she had the baby right after testimony, as it turns out. You think that she wanted to go before the world and admit to all of the freaky stuff that she did, and that she's FaceTiming her husband at the same time she's cheating on him with Sean Combs, and they threatened her like they always do and gave her immunity. And so she didn't want to do this. Jane didn't want to do this, not with Diddy, Sean Combs subsidizing her lifestyle and all that. And nobody wanted to do this, but the feds don't give a shit. If you think that that's the only way that this jury could have come to that verdict is they had to have been paid off, then you just were not paying honest attention to this trial, because there were too many things that came up in the actual trial itself that poked giant holes in the government's case. I think that this is an unprecedented case of civil lawsuits just gone awry, but he's going to have to deal with them.
First off, we were right almost fully, but on the major charges, completely correct.
Look, you were right about it. And I just want to say to the jury, I know that we all talk shit about juries a lot and have over the years, whether we're talking about OJ or whatever, but they did the right thing here. They came up with a sensible verdict, and they're going to get a lot of hate for it. I'm already seeing now people on the internet saying, I can't wait to find out who these jurors are. And I'm sure they were paid off. Even reasonable people that I respect online freaking out, saying that surely the jury was paid off. If you think that that's the only way that this jury could have come to that verdict is they had to have been paid off, then you just were not paying honest attention to this trial, because there were too many things that came up in the actual trial itself that poked giant holes in the government's case.
So Diddy got a huge W today. They only found him guilty on the interstate prostitution stuff with the Jane victim, quote unquote, right. Or whatever, right. And Cassie Ventura.
By the way, whose house he's still paying for at this moment.
Why is he doing that? Is what I want to know.
He's his baby mama, I believe. It all gets so complicated, but he's still subsidizing her lifestyle. So she didn't want to testify against him. That's the thing. The prosecutors don't give. Let me just tell everybody. I'm sorry to sidetrack you for a second, but the prosecutors, the feds, do not give a shit about the victims. You think that Cassie Ventura, about to pop from her baby, from being pregnant, she had the baby right after testimony, as it turns out. You think that she wanted to go before the world and admit to all of the freaky stuff that she did, and that she's FaceTiming her husband at the same time she's cheating on him with Sean Combs, and all of this, that she voluntarily swallowed urine, stuff like this. You think she wanted all that out there? The feds, I guarantee you, 100% sure, the feds told her that she was going to be indicted as a co-conspirator, because she actually, you could argue, was kind of a Ghislaine Maxwell in this, if you wanted to go that way with it. And they threatened her like they always do and gave her immunity. And so she didn't want to do this. Jane didn't want to do this, not with Diddy, Sean Combs subsidizing her lifestyle and all that. And nobody wanted to do this. But the feds don't give a shit who they have to hurt, even victims.
Well, people don't realize how dirty the feds are, actually. Right. And I do. And I know a lot about that. I won't go into, I've not personally been investigated, but I know some people in my history who have been. I won't go through all that, because that'll be just catnip for the trolls. So I won't do that. But I'm very well aware of how dirty the federal government is when they want to bring you down. And I saw somebody. So Cassie Ventura's lawyer was all over the place today. They sent a letter to the judge trying to get him to deny bail. She's a hero and a victim. She got $30 million fucking dollars. And the only reason she went public with this story at first is because she felt like Diddy lowballed her on the offer that he did end up making. And then, of course, they got right within a day. Now, people like me have said, well, he should have just paid whatever she was asking.
He should have, but whatever. You know,
mistakes happen. But it's still whatever. It's not like she wanted a payday, and people could argue she deserved one, whatever. But like, it wasn't just out of the kindness of her heart that all this came forward. But I saw a lawyer earlier. You mentioned she could have possibly been indicted as a co-conspirator. They said that the prosecution would have probably had a lot better case had they indicted her as a co-conspirator, right? That this wasn't flying with the jury. If you go through her text messages, she said, you know, I love freak offs, and she was picking out the escorts herself. Yeah, she was picking out all the escorts, and she, according to the Punisher, who I saw on Piers Morgan earlier, I don't want to speculate how he got that name, but he said
it was from a video game or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think took great glee in calling him the Punisher, whatever. But he said she enjoyed it. He was a witness for the prosecution, I think, and there were a couple of instances like this where it was their witness, but the defense had a field day on cross-examination, so much so that they ended up, you know, not even presenting a case, really. They said this, you know, speaks for itself. We don't need to present a case. And they ended up being right. But what do you think about that theory that maybe she should have been indicted as a co-conspirator if they wanted to win this case?
I mean, I don't know, because on the other hand, then, sorry, I'm hearing a little feedback. I'm sure it'll go away. On the other hand, then you've taken away really the biggest component of sympathy there. In other words, the thing that's getting people riled up against Diddy most is that hotel video of her being beaten, and also of sort of the general story of her and what she went through. And you and I and others might see a lot of holes in that and places where she still had agency and stuff. But this was the biggest sympathy generator for the prosecution. So then if they were to make her a co-conspirator, you're taking that card away. I just don't think they should have brought it to begin with.
I agree. And I think you're familiar with my thoughts because we talked about this last time. I don't think prostitution should be illegal. I don't think they should charge people for interstate prostitution either. The Mann Act's of outdated law in the first place. Bringing that stuff up. My thoughts are different than some people's. All vice should be illegal. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and can we just say too that this kind of high-priced escort service is different from your street hooker who is basically in a servitude to a pimp. Like it's not that same situation, right? And so I totally of any prostitution that should be illegal, this kind of stuff should be.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like some people who are, and it does exist, you know, like under the control of certain organizations or people or anything like that. These people were independent and doing their own thing. And whether you agree with it or not, like whatever. But you mentioned the video, so that's definitely a thing that kind of prejudices a lot of people, right? They see that and they're like, lock him up. And I feel like that's the case. And again, I'm not excusing that sort of behavior. You look at the record, there are people who said she was violent with Puff at certain times. And that's not excusing, you know, he's stronger than her, he's bigger than her. That's all true.
That's a good point.
But like, I don't know. I've known some crazy relationships. I've seen others' relationships too. And you know, I'm not saying anything like that happened. It didn't, but still, people aren't aware sometimes of just how volatile and how insane things can get. And you know, it's not always as easy as, oh, this person's a monster because this happened. You're not taking into account the totality of a tempestuous relationship.
That's true. That is an argument that is a very hard one to make in our society because so many people see that as victim blaming, and and I get attacked constantly for, in this case, for excusing domestic violence, and that's not what we're saying. But look, let me tell you one thing that might surprise people. The Jane woman, the relationship, you know, one of the building blocks for the prosecution of trying to prove that he was not only abusive, but that these women felt pressure into freak offs. She admitted on the stand, quite casually, I have to say, that she was the one who initiated violence in their relationship, apparently. And this was the last woman that Diddy seriously dated. In fact, he was still dating her, or whatever you want to call it, when he got arrested. She admitted on the stand that he was not violent with her for a long time. And so there's a stereotype of him as just being this violent beast. I don't know. Maybe his behavior has changed, maybe getting, you know, more sober. I think he apparently quit some things like opioids, whatever. I don't know. But apparently she said he was not violent with her through their relationship until this lawsuit happened and all this stress came into his life with the Cassie stuff. And according to the testimony that I read, unless I was missing something, she was the person who started the violence. She hit him, and she admits to it. And so I'm thinking, wow, this is a really different narrative than the assumptions that people are making, that this man, if you get in a relationship with him, he's just beating the shit out of you and he's controlling everything you do and all of that. But when you make that argument, a lot of people, they hear it the wrong way. They internalize it as you're saying that, oh, you know, it's fine and she was wrong and he wasn't and all of that. When really, I agree with you. There are a lot of relationships that are just toxic, and the man and the woman both suck. Now, we all have to recognize that men, because they're physically stronger than women, they do a lot more damage when they're violent than when the women do. So I'm not saying that it's completely equivalent here, but it's definitely more complicated than the public narrative. And what happened is the jury, they didn't get to skip in and out of this like we do on social media and just get bits and pieces of it. They had to sit there and they had to listen to all of the testimony. And over time, I think they got a correct view of this relationship.
Yeah, it's not as simple as a lot of people try to make it. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to make this argument. Some people just don't want to hear it at all, and I've run up against that too.